Welcome to Mostly Off Topic, the One Ring Player Tips, I guess this is called. So this is a new series of videos that I'm going to try that is more focused on players and advice for new players. I've been doing a series for a while on GM tips for the One Ring role-playing game. So if you're a GM, if you're new to the One Ring role-playing game and you're running it, you can check out those videos. There might be something there that's useful to you. But I've got two of my players here. So I've got Paul and Ben, and they're part of our ongoing campaign, which is set in the Darkening of Mirkwood framework. Paul and Ben, say hi.
Hi.
So upbeat and joyful.
This is how we play
Hello.
games.
Yeah.
Joe just directs us, and we just follow him.
He is the puppet master.
To be fair, there aren't many kind of upbeat scenes in the Darkening of Mirkwood.
No,
I think
it's all a bit dark.
There's maybe been one or two. Okay, so just to give you a brief outline of our campaign, we're 16 sessions in, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We've been playing for about a year of real world time, and that's equated to about 6 years or so of game time. So we're not massively deep into the campaign, but we've done a lot of adventuring phases. There's been quite a lot of side questing and things like that. We tend to run about 2 adventuring phases per year, but sometimes that's a little bit less. The scope of the campaign is quite focused on nitty-gritty adventuring. There's not much kind of high political interaction at the minute, or that kind of thing. And it's mostly happening in Mirkwood.
We have interacted with some movers and shakers.
Yep.
Radagast, Thranduil.
Yeah, we're known. We've got
Rep.
Yeah.
we don't like to talk about it.
We're infamous rather than famous.
You've definitely got a rep.
Yeah. It's what we do.
That's an in-joke that's going to translate perfectly for this. So just a really quick kind of character overview. If we start with you, Ben, just tell us about your character.
I play Sigismund Swiftfoot. I'm a wild hobbit who's come from a very dark background of having lost his family to a goblin attack from the mountains.
Cool. And Paul, tell us about Fastrid.
So I play Fastrid. He is a rider of Rohan. He's a bardic minstrel, kind of drawing from that warrior minstrel skald style rather than the troubadour kind of bardic style. And he wasn't really welcome in Edoras with King Thengel, and he's kind of headed out because he needed to do so. And I've got quite a following. Amy, who's got more of a talking part than my squire.
Amy's your horse. So,
Amy's my horse, yeah.
You do have a full entourage.
Yeah, Fastrid has got a crew.
He does. He's got a groupies.
In this episode, we're going to focus on cultures. Now, cultures are different to other role-playing games, which are built around classes. And in the One Ring role-playing game, there are no classes. There's no knight, as it were, or barbarian, but some of the cultures kind of resonate with those character archetypes.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your experience when you were creating a character and kind of coming up with the concept? What was the first thing you started to think about when you were looking at those cultures in the core book or in the Adventurer's Companion? So,
how did I become a rider of Rohan?
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was that from day one?
Oh, absolutely. So the Rohirrim has always been my favourite culture in Middle-earth, or my favourite part of Middle-earth, nation, call it what you like. And as soon as we kind of were talking about doing a One Ring, that I was going to play it, and I was like, I want to play the Rohirrim. I really... Helm's Deep, Pelennor Fields, not just from the films but from the book before, but really kind of resonates with me. And I think the fact that the Rohirrim don't have a member of the Fellowship is actually quite something that really interests me as well. To a certain extent, I think it almost gives you a little bit more opportunity to kind of to explore that. And I think that they've got a very definite sense of themselves and an identity.
Yeah.
Tolkien's really good at giving them an identity and making them a culture rather than just a nation. So I was kind of like rather Rohan, which isn't actually in the core book.
Also, you're a horse Viking.
A horse Viking. What's not to like about horses and Vikings?
Yeah.
I mean, probably the horse shit and the fact that they're stabbing you and stealing your cows.
Yeah.
You're kind of against the archetype though, because you're a singing horse Viking.
You still do a lot of stabbing though.
Well, I have to say, I think it would be fair to say that in Fastred's journey as a character, he is more martial than I envisaged him being at the start. I envisaged him being a much more scholarly character and individual.
More of a nerd.
Yeah, more of a nerd, more ferreting around in kind of like in caches of lore and hidden things. So I think one of the other things that almost pretends to be a class in the One Ring are the what do they call it? The callings.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's a scholar calling, but actually, partly I think because there's just the 3 players, and therefore he needs to pick up a little bit of that slack.
Yeah, I can only kill so many things.
The Rohan culture is a martial culture, so I think it also plays into that. I think one of the things that a culture gives you is a really good archetype and a baseline.
Yeah.
One of the downsides is that I think it can be quite restrictive in some ways, and you can start to play against type a bit. But you've got it there, and it rolls race and class into one thing.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's like selecting mine. My default setting in any of these kind of environments is to be the axe wielding barbarian. It's like, why wouldn't you be? And so Bjornings was where I was looking initially. But then I've been trying to play out a type because I think that makes for a more fun role playing experience. So I've never been a massive fan of hobbits. I always felt that they were probably the weakest part of Lord of the Rings. I know that's controversial, but they're too jolly and cheery, and then they become really morose. Sam Gamgee's is probably my favourite because he's the one. I liked his stoicism, the fact that he just got shit done, and then progressed from there. But yeah, so I selected the Hobbit because I don't particularly like them, and then, but it was mainly the Wild Hobbit culture that kind of gave me that sort of switch though, because it gave the scope to them not be this jolly, constantly little furry footy happy folk from halflings and we smoke our pipeweed and do this. No, it gave a bit more scope. So okay, well what happened to those the race and the cultures of those that stayed the other side of the mountains? Where did they go? How did their kind of lives develop? And then I picked the Slayer culture as a Slayer calling because he obviously his whole family got wiped out, and again it gave me a reason to be wandering in the wild rather than just be like, oh, I'm just gonna nip off and do something. Because again, if you're playing to Hobbit film, even the wild hobbits, they're very much not in my backyard kind of approach to things. They sit there, they'll stay in their own comfort zone, aside from the odd ones with Tuckish blood and all that. But it gave me that, okay, well, everyone who I know is dead, so I better move on.
Yeah. So I think you've both picked up on a really integral bit of the mechanic of cultures in the game, in that they immediately give you a reference point for the characters, for the homeland, and the kind of storytelling bit that you can start to draw on to shape your character, rather than just being a kind of a skeleton of boxes that you put numbers in and start to fill out in that way. You start thinking of the characters from the stories.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if I look at the world's most popular role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons, and the way in which that does it, just as a reference point, it's race and class is the dominant way in which you get features and abilities and such like. And I think that cultures combine race and class and a little bit of background together. And that's what's kind of dominates. And from the cultures you get a social aspect, you get a political aspect, and you get a geographical aspect. So my advice to a player, kind of looking to say, well, what kind of cultures do I want to play? Partly look at, are they a martial? Are they a prosperous kind of environment or kind of culture, and if you want to play an axe wielder, then kind of go down that. But you can broaden that out because none of them is actually restrained particularly. No. They all have elements that you can kind of play in that
There's
way.
definitely a loose sense in that respect of like the ability to just play against type. There's nothing to say like, oh, I come from a martial culture. You could have then been like, well, I come from a martial culture and I've left because I'm not at all martial. I don't want to fight anything. I don't want to encounter in that way. And it gives you that scope. One of the things I really liked about what particularly the Adventurer's Companion gives you was it talks about what your opinion of the other races are.
Yeah.
And that's quite fun and it can like affect like your decision when you're picking one. It's like, what's everyone else playing? Do you want to play oh well, all of the Fellowship are getting along great. Oh well, actually these guys from their background like this other class or this other race rather. It's like, for example, Sigismund likes the Woodman, which is what our other player plays, but sees you guys as like noisy horsemen and with bright spears clattering through the woods, sort of making a lot of noise and not having anything. So it gives you then some just sort of like points of being like, well, actually, I'll be a bit more towards this character to start with, and it's just those a bit more of like the fluff, a bit more of the role play kind of element of it to be able to be like, well, I'm not too sure about this guy at this stage because the matriarch, she told me to stay away from them because they'll kill me with their spears and that type of thing. It's building in that respect. So yeah, it does. There's definitely it's a class system with a lot of flavour attached to it.
And I would also say that what you want to do is you want to talk to the GM. I don't know. I can't remember what one. Lore master, and you want to understand where is the campaign likely to be centred, because I think some cultures are easier to explain or to be involved in a more fluent way. So if Matt wasn't playing a woodsman, our campaign would have been very different. We would have been much more the outsiders.
They certainly wouldn't have been listening to us at moots and letting us have our say,
or it would have felt more contrived as to why that was the case. But he allowed us to anchor ourselves in that geography, and you can always come up with a reason why you're not where you are.
Yeah.
But it's about how contrived does it feel, and so on.
Well, it's with it being very much a heroic based game, as in like we are there to play heroes.
Yeah.
It gave us a reason to care about the Woodman, because realistically, why would we be bothered otherwise? And it's that's where that like you said, that anchor kind of plays in, gives you some point to be a reason to be part of it, and a reason to be there, and a reason to be. Well, why aren't we fighting against the shadow somewhere else? No, we're choosing to make our stand here at this point because of these other factors.
And also, kind of with the cultures, I think it's the first part of a funnel, because I do think that choosing your culture means that you are not going to be able to do some things or not be able to do them as well. It very much, you inherit a set of your skills and your traits and your rewards for your virtues and for your wisdom from culture. And you've got an ability to tailor a little bit with the callings, but by and large you are starting to funnel down your character space that you're playing with it.
It's like class, subclass kind of thing, because like even like within the culture you can be like
you've got the different backgrounds.
Yeah, and they kind of so I focused on one that kind of meant I was more, because for some reason I decided to go stealthy. I also don't like playing stealth players, but again, play against type. That'll be a tip. Try and play against something you wouldn't normally play.
Yeah, I was going to say your advice basically is to dabble, isn't it, and try something that you wouldn't.
My advice is slightly contradictory actually, because my advice would be play something that you're passionate about. Play something that you. I love Fastred, a lot of it because of his row here, and I can see him at the Battle of Palinor Fields, kind of like when Theoden's going death.
See, I now love Sig because he's not me, if that makes sense.
I wouldn't be at the Battle of Palinor Fields. I'd be like,
it's that playing the fantasy element, and it's that it's picking, but it's how you get there. But yeah, if you like play against type occasionally, it just gives you some options. That's what I found.
Cool. Are there any cultures from the whole of the options on offer that you just wouldn't want to play?
Elves.
Which type?
We weren't really looking at high elves, were we? Because they're kind of like advanced player types.
I was.
Were you?
Well, you came in slightly late, didn't you? You missed a couple of sessions and that.
And also, I ran the One Ring for
advanced player type, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I find elves boring.
But they do magic.
I think they make great NPCs. They're kind of like these sort of aloof things, but to actually play in a party with someone who is, or for me to be like, oh no, I'm aloof, I'm an elf, I'm very much they're a bit, like I say, a bit boring. So I wouldn't have played an elf.
Sweet. What about you, Paul? Is there a culture that you really don't vibe with?
Not particularly.
Dunlendings, is there a bit of Rohan animosity there?
They're not really a culture, though, are they?
There's no culture there. They're a rabble.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to deign. I wouldn't want to suggest that is a viable player choice. That's a bit harsh.
It does stand out to me. Like Dunlending, I'm sure there are people who love their Dunlending characters, but it jumps out to me as a strange kind of one to be in there.
I think it's a very hard one to play in the fact that you have to play heroically.
Right,
they're a bit grey area for me.
I think that's not a bad thing because that allows you a little bit of space to explore. I suspect that's more of a game design decision than actually a viable type that people are expected to play a lot of decision. But even then, I think they've got a place in the world. I think
just not near you.
Yeah, I think I find the kind of Bjorning, Lake Town, Woodsman to be not strongly differentiated enough for me, if I'm entirely honest about it. And I understand that there are distinct cultures in the world, and that they have different emphasis and so on, but it all feels kind of much of a muchness.
I think you'd have to do a lot of work yourself in the background research and looking in, because effectively they're all descended from
they're all men of the north, aren't they?
Yeah. So it'd be a case of let's look at what else is out there in the history and the lore, and then focus on that side of it. It's less defined in the game. It's probably a harder choice to make initially without any knowledge of the background.
Yeah, and I also would say that Shire hobbits are you're playing a rogue burglar, I think, but that criticism is almost a little bit backwards. The archetype exists in other games because of Tolkien.
Yes,
to a certain extent. So it's kind of like I'm always criticising it because actually
the halfling rogue
stuff. Actually no, this is the original. I'm complaining because I've seen loads of copies, but this is the original. But other than that's kind of my view on cultures.
Yeah. So the point about Bjornings and Woodmen and Lakewomen is interesting because I look at the advancement options for Bjornings and think, wow, that's pretty far out. Like they basically get to turn into bears at night and walk around and explore, and they bake honey cakes, which is nice. But they do seem to have a pretty different set of advancement options that sort of touches on a sort of magic system in a way.
It's a very out there option though, because like I said, my initial drawing was to be a Bjorning, because who doesn't want to be a werebear? But the more I read into it, it's like, again, and this another tip, have a rough idea where you want to be going.
Geography is important.
Like location wise and also player wise. Like what do you like playing as? So kind of like, because werebear, great. How many times am I going to get to use that? Is it going to be like feasible? Is it if we spend a load of time around Lake Town, how much am I going to be wandering around as a bear in the streets of Lake Town, for example? That type of thing. It's have a look, think down those options. Look at a couple of levels. Look a couple of advancements ahead.
It's almost like a personal development plan, isn't it, for your character?
Where do you want to be? What's your 5-year plan?
But you twice baked honey cakes. You'd be using those every session.
That's it. Be all over them.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point that you kind of talked to though. Are there any cultures where you think that the opportunity to develop the character is greater or lesser?
Yeah, I think dwarves have got a huge opportunity for development, because there's very much a they're quite distinct, the three different types, like Blue Mountains, Iron Hills, and
Erebor.
Yeah,
Grey Mountains as well. There's tons of them.
They're like, so I want to play dwarf. Okay, great. Well, I want to play an axe wielding fighting dwarf. Well, I'm from Erebor then. Actually, I want to play quite an intellectual dwarf. Well, I'm Blue Mountains then.
Yeah.
There's a huge scope there of kind of either playing to or against type, and then how you want to build it. And I think it's one of probably the most untapped resources in the game. Like, I'm actually quite gutted we don't have a dwarf in the party.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to play a different, maybe a mini campaign that's just dwarves. Like maybe a party of 4 or 5 dwarves. Mainly, I think probably from a player point of view, I'd want to be involved in that. But someone asked me on one of the GM tips videos, like, how do you go about creating a tank in this game? There doesn't seem to be an option, and I genuinely never thought about that, so I looked into it, and dwarves are the answer. There's one of the cultures of dwarves that have cultural blessings and whatnot that just allow you to just load up on armour and wade into the fray.
And so just kind of taking the question a little bit, what about the cultures? Are there any cultures where you think that there is a hero, zero to hero opportunity? Because I would say that within Middle Earth, the nature of the time frame and the nature of the narrative that it would typically live within, social mobility is a lot more restrained than you would find in a traditional role-playing game.
Men of Bree.
Any of the races of men, essentially. Like, certainly the ones that don't come from, so not your Rohirrim, but any of like woodmen. Oh, I'm just a simple axe wielding woodman. Oh, I'm now riding at the head of battles and
Wolfswood.
Yeah, essentially. Or I'd say there's actually a lot that give you that option, like Wild Hobbit.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a hero of various battles, but essentially I was an orphan foundling kind of.
So turning that into advice, then, if a player's desire is to kind of go zero through hero, playing one of those cultures provides more out of the box.
Yeah, there's definite kind of like when your zero to heroes always come from a basic simple background. They're always the farm boy, the kind of the stable lad, the kind of the apprentice,
washerwoman.
Yeah, that type of thing. Yeah, I really realised I referenced those.
Washerwoman.
Yeah, like the maid, the scullery maid, whatever.
Yeah.
That's always it's because it's seen as. So if you're a warrior and you kill a troll, you've done your job. If you're a washerwoman and you kill a troll, you've stepped up. You've gone beyond your boundaries. You've socially uplifted yourself.
Yeah, or you're probably in the wrong scullery.
Troll in the scullery.
I think she washes in the Prancing Pony.
Yeah. She's just killed a Nazgul. Okay, so one of the things that attracted me to the Rohirrim actually was because of the political situation in Rohan at the time of the game. Because King Thengol, if we just accept that timeline goes through, King Thengol's a piece of work. He's kind of like got loads of arguments with the marshals of the various East Marsh and so on and so forth, and then Theoden King is going to kind of come in, and it's going to be a different political situation. So one of the reasons I thought about playing one of the Rohirrim was because it created an opportunity for me to be involved back in a future story that the natural timeline gave.
And that's what part of it goes back to what I was talking about earlier of look that bit ahead.
Yeah.
Have a think of like, don't just look at it in isolation of I'm creating a character in this world at this point. It's the history's already there, and while your interactions and your encounters as your adventuring party will be different and won't necessarily they'll be parallel to some of the big events that are going on, there's big timeline events. Like, you're jumping into something where the outcome's already, like, you're heading towards, there's an end point to it all. It's, that these battles are going to happen later. And if that's something that you want to then be involved in, well, then work out, well, actually, if I'm part of this culture, it gives me a reason to be drawn into that fight at that point. It gives me a reason to kind of touch that base. And it's in some respects, it's one of the greatest advantages of the One Ring, is the fact that there is so much out there, as in background lore to draw from, timelines, histories, cultures. The fact that Tolkien went to such a degree, and like with his, like, he wrote mythologies for them all, and like they've all got this. That's all just gold for you, and like you're kind of
so if I was to turn that into a piece of advice about a player choosing a culture, I would say, okay, you look at the mechanic, look at how you want to express your idea in that. But do a little bit of research in the core or in your culture's source book. So the Rohirrim in the Rohan lands, or what happened, Lords of the Horse Lords, and just read through some of the some of that story fiction that's in there, because it grounds you in your culture, but also it allows you to kind of go to the gem and say, actually, I've got this interesting story arc that I'd like to be, or see how this plays out. And one of the frustrations I think I always have as a player in most role-playing games is I'm kind of like, I don't know what context I'm taking these decisions in, because I can't be equipped with enough knowledge about the world to make sense of it.
True.
Whereas actually the source books, because they've got the literary to draw upon, can provide you with that, and can provide you with some view of what the future fates hold. So I would say, heavily recommend that. Bit of more reading will deliver itself back to you quite a lot.
So that was cultures in the One Ring, and kind of how we've experienced it, and how our players approach cultures and how they see them. Hope you found that useful. This is a new series, so leave us a comment, leave us some feedback, and if you've got any questions, we'll pick them up in a future video. But thanks for watching.